afternoon and welcome back to the Beyond by Any Greens Necessary show. I'm your host, Melvin Thompson, the Executive Director of the Endeleo Institute. Got a little caught up there. But we are so happy that you're back. We are here because of our farmers market, of course, every week, every Saturday at 400 West 95th Street, across the street from Trinity United Church of Christ. Again, my name is Melvin Thompson, the Executive Director of the Endeleo Institute. Endeleo is the Swahili word for progress, growth, and development. Got a chance to go to the market last week, and I just can't say enough about the glorious weather that we're actually experiencing right now. It is actually perfect. I know there's a hint of coolness at night and in the mornings, but these have been perfect days for the farmers market. And so if there were ever a time to get out and shop with us, it would be right now. I mean, this Saturday coming up is going to be another wonderful, I think a bit on the humid side, but still a wonderful second half to our farmers market. And so I'm excited about the opportunities that are existing at the market. Had a chance to spend more of kind of like a full day there, or mostly a full day. We had a number of other things going on, including a 3-on-3 basketball tournament that was going on at Robichaud Park, right across the street, where we had a back-to-school tournament for young people in and around the community. So that was positive. Excuse me. And so we just had a grand time within that 95th Street corridor, and we like to replicate that year round, and so it's just a great time. If you have any questions or comments about the show today, we got a really stimulating show last week, and hopefully we'll follow up with some of the things that I want to talk to you about today. This is kind of I was at a congregational meeting last night, and I heard the term video podcast, and this is kind of CAN TV gives us the opportunity to actually do sort of our own podcast in a video form. And so I'm really excited about that. And so if you have any questions or comments about the show, please give us a call, 312-738-1060. That's 312-738-1060. So I want to get right into it. Had some really interesting things that I wanted to talk to you about today. First and foremost, though, I wanted to share our visioning meeting that's going to be taking place on September 8th. That's going to be our next, and I want to show you the actual flyer for that. See if I can zoom in on that just a little bit, maybe. Okay, that's going to be good enough. And that says Walkable Washington Heights. And this is the third in a series of community visioning sessions that we've had in the community around revitalizing the 95th Street corridor. This is, again, the visioning session number 3. The one that we participated in, hosted on the same day as the Bud Billiken Parade, was quite successful, despite the fact that it was on such a major day for a parade. And so we got a lot of community feedback. This particular meeting is going to feature some of the African American developers that have done really exceptional work in and around our community on both the south and west sides. So we're excited about a panel discussion that we're going to host at the Woodson Library on September 8th. And this time it'll be from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're kind of staggering the times because sometimes early mornings on Saturdays are busy enough, but sometimes we like to stagger the times to accommodate a different group of people who ordinarily wouldn't be able to make that. And so we're going to do this at the Woodson Library, the renovated new, beautiful Woodson Library from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. In the auditorium. So please, if you have ever wanted to engage with developers who are doing wonderful things in and around the Chicagoland area, this is your opportunity to ask questions and talk to them about, what the process is in terms of, seeing something come from start to finish. And so we're really excited about it and get their take on how they even navigate with the city in terms of getting developments done and the realistic approach to how our community in Washington Heights can go about trying to see some much needed development happen along the 95th Street corridor, and to do that in a very strategic way. And what better way than to get input from folks that have done it and have been successful. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, but we definitely want to see people who look like us, representing us, doing the kind of work that we like to see in our community. That we had an African American contractor. I don't think I'm allowed to mention the name, but we did have an African American contractor that oversaw the entire renovation of the Woodson Library. We're going to have him there, hopefully, and probably 3 or 4 other developers in and around the community to share their insights. So please make plans to be there on September 8th at 2 o'clock. Had a chance to kind of unwind yesterday and go and participate in a retreat. Endeleo is part of a group of community-based organizations that are partnered with Northwestern University here in Chicago, the Chicago Campus University, at their Center for Community Health. And so we've been, Endeleo, that is, has been in partnership with that organization for about 3 years now. But the organization itself, which is titled the Alliance for Research in Chicagoland Communities, or ARC for short, ARCC, has been in existence for 10 years. And we were basically at this retreat celebrating 10 years of community-based participatory research. In other words, sharing research within the community, which is definitely something that we haven't been able to do as a community as a whole. It's something the community doesn't necessarily have access to, and so we're marrying academic research with community, and I'm so proud to be a once steering committee member and now just a member of this wonderful organization. And so we had this retreat, and it brought together all of our ARC members, or most of them. I mean, we had Puerto Rican organizations, Asian American, African American organizations, all at the table, just kind of kicking back and actually going through what's called an unmeeting, in which there was really no real agenda. We as members kind of created the agenda, and so it was quite interesting to not have a really scripted way to conduct the meeting, and it was an all day from 8:30 to 3:30, and we really touched on a number of things, some successes, accomplishments of our individual organizations, what we've been able to do collectively. I think over $500,000 in grants have been awarded over the last 10 years. Endeleo is the recipient of a couple of those grants, and so it was just a great time to come together and talk about some of the successes, the challenges, and what's ahead going forward. And so one of the themes that really came out of the meeting that really stuck with me and is particularly relevant is the word power, and how that relates to how we can create healthier communities in on the south and west sides, where communities of color exist and don't have A, healthy communities, and B, the power to change it. And so that really stuck with me, and I really was quite vocal yesterday about just the lack of power. And so today I kind of looked up the word just for my own education, and it was quite simple: the ability to do something in a particular way. That's basically the definition of power. And one of the key elements of having power is kind of controlling your own destiny, right? And one of the elements was, how do we empower ourselves or give ourselves power when the larger community doesn't seem likely to do that. And so I even went back even further and started looking up the definition of black power, and that was quite interesting. And let me just read to you about its definition that you can Google anytime. And it says, a movement that grew out of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Black power calls for independent development of political and social institutions for black people and emphasizes pride in black culture. And I think that pretty much sums up what Endeleo really stands for in terms of just this political, social, and economic power to do the things that are conducive to creating a healthy community. And so you might say that there's been somewhat of a power outage in our community, and I think everybody within the sound of my voice has experienced an outage of some point. I mean, in their lives. I mean, just think about when the power goes out, right in the midst of what you're doing, either at home or in your office. It's like, the first thing you think of is, wow, okay, everything is out and there's nothing moving, and I think your first thing is, when is it coming back on? And then once it's been off for a couple of minutes and it goes into 5 and 10 minutes, now you're starting to realize that you don't have the ability to do the things that you were doing before the power went out. And for us as a community, I don't know that we've ever had the power on in our community, and that we've kind of normalized walking and kind of groping around in the dark, literally, in the darks of our community, not having the power to activate, the power to generate, the power to coalesce and actually move things forward. And that's why the restoration of the Woodson Library was so powerful in terms of the community coming together, seeing a problem, and coalescing and actually doing something about it, and using the power that we have among us to see something change. And so we're building a power base, if you will, to continue that work along the 95th Street corridor. And so I love the fact that we had a very rich discussion yesterday with different groups and organizations, and some of the suggestions that came out of that was maybe we're not in all of the right places that we need to be to start activating our power in more powerful ways. Maybe we should be at more city council meetings. Maybe we should be more policy and advocacy related. And I agree with all those things, because decisions are being made oftentimes without our counsel, without our input, and so maybe we need to start coalescing around issues that are getting rubber stamped in City Hall. And so that's why someone yelled out voting yesterday, and obviously that is key as the upcoming elections, and people are starting to jockey around for positioning, for governor, for mayor, and even at the automatic level. And so we really need to really assess who should be in power, that we vote in there, and who we support going forward. And I think it's really a conscious effort on our part to make a conscious decision on who will best serve our interests in terms of empowering us to be able to make the kind of decisions and the kind of changes that we want to see in our community. I've been here in Chicago my whole life. I have yet to see a community of color be actually empowered. In other words, given the power or the authority to do things in their own community. And historically, anytime that a group of African Americans have done that, that's been destroyed. I mean, quite simple. I mean, it's either been burned down, torn down, or legislatively just eradicated. And so, there's certainly no political will to empower those who have not had, the access to that. And so, I think this is a really critical time. I think everyone is cognizant of what's happening right now in terms of, our national politics and the, persistent abuse of the powers, at the highest level. And so it's a really civic lesson that we should be, imparting to our community and particularly to our young people. Endeleo focuses in health, education, and community development. And I'm going to be really, more forceful in our education piece to make sure that, these civic lessons that are unfolding literally in front of us are imparted to our young people, because that, of course, is our future. And so they need to do that, without blinders on, in terms of, who's actually for you, in terms of, how you're going to be able to live the kind of quality of life that you expect to live. And so that often comes down to the voting booth and, the policies that are enacted and the legislation that, we live by. And so all of this stuff is connected, and so we shouldn't look at any of it in a vacuum. So if you got any questions or thoughts about this, please give us a call, 312-738-1060. I'd love to hear from you and get your thoughts on it. But power is not given. I raised the point yesterday that, for hundreds of years, one group of people have had this power base. And if the situation, was reversed, would, as a people, would we be so, receptive to now abdicating from that power base and being more, equitable with it? I don't know. That's not a position we're able to talk about, from that standpoint. But that's the point that I'm trying to make, that there's a, from the dominant culture, there's not going to be a free and easy, methodology in gaining equitable power in this country. And so we're going to have to do this together as communities of color to go to the ballot box and, make our voices known, make our voices heard, and start to change things incrementally. One of the things that also came up last night at our retreat was kind of the disconnectedness to the things that we do, even the positive things that we do in our community that don't seem to connect to one another. And I mean, that resonates with me more than anything. And I think one of the reasons why, we're having these community visioning sessions is that we're not limiting this to just our neighborhood. I mean, anyone that's in favor of, seeing the 95th Street corridor could easily replace that with their own corridor on 79th Street, or West Congress on the west side, or 79th Street, or any place in Chicago, because we're all in the proverbial same boat in terms of needing to see our communities revitalized. And so what happens at, let's say, the Obama Center, I mean, that's the greatest investment that we've seen, that'll be on the South Side. And how do we, as communities, across the South Side start to band together to make sure that that's not just a one-off kind of development that's going on the South Side in the Woodlawn community, and how does that translate to South Shore, Calumet Heights, Pullman, Washington Heights, Roseland, and even, just how do we connect the dots there? And one of the great things about that is the fact that there will be African American developers that have a piece of that pie, and I just love what organizations like Blacks in Green are doing down in Woodlawn to ensure that African Americans are down there working on that project, because it's essential that we have a face on that project, and that'll be conducive to other projects on the far South Side, where we can say, okay, we've got DuSable Museum here, we've got the library project here, we've got the Woodson Library here. They're doing great work in Pullman, farther south than us. How do we connect all of those things together? Because if you go on the north side, there's a connectedness to it, and one neighborhood kind of spills into the next. So if you're in the near north side, the next thing you know, you're in Lincoln Park, and then you're in Lakeview, and then you're in Wrigleyville, and then you're in North Center, and all of these things, and it's almost like seamless how you actually get there, and you see all this wonderful development. You see restaurants galore, you see places for art and culture. How do we juxtapose that to the South Side and connect all of these gems that we have to make our neighborhoods seamless? And that's part of the community visioning that we see that'll come out of these sessions that we're having at 95th Street. And so I urge people who are interested in seeing a revolution of power, a power movement on the south and west sides, to come together, because again, what affects one community certainly affects others, and it doesn't matter what's going on in your community, we're viewed the same way. And so it's important that we come together, and certainly it doesn't need one central leader. We're all leaders in our own right, and so we shouldn't get caught up in who's the chief and who are the Indians. I mean, let's just get down to the business. We have power. We represent a very significant percentage of this population, and so we need everyone at the table. I urge you to come out, and again, we'll be at the Woodson Library on September 8th. Please come out. In the meantime, by any means necessary, please come out and support our farmers market, where you will see the power of economics and cooperative economics taking place right before your eyes with African American vendors. We could always use more vendors. We've got farmers and from Pembroke, Illinois, who are contributing to the local economy. So please continue to come out, support that, and we will see you soon next week. And by any means necessary, this is Melvin Thompson from Endeleo. See you next week.